Welcome to Freedom Flicker. In 2025, President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs have sparked a firestorm, reshaping global trade and igniting fierce legal battles. Just this week, a federal appeals court delivered a bombshell, ruling that most of Trump's tariffs are illegal, setting the stage for a high-stakes showdown at the U.S. Supreme Court. Today, we're diving deep into this 30-minute special to unpack what these tariffs are, why they were struck down, what it means for the U.S. economy, and what's next in this historic legal fight. Whether you're a policy wonk, a business owner, or just curious about the headlines, this video has you covered. Stick around to the end for our take on how this could reshape America's future. Let's get started with the background. On April 2nd, 2025, President Trump announced his Liberation Day tariffs, imposing a 10% baseline duty on imports from nearly every U.S. trading partner, with additional tariffs up to 50% on countries like China, Canada, Mexico, and India. He also slapped 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 20% on China, citing fentanyl trafficking and trade deficits as national emergencies. These tariffs, enacted under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, or IEEPA, were meant to pressure trading partners into new deals and boost American manufacturing. By July, they generated $142 billion in revenue, more than double the previous year's haul. But here's the catch. Trump's use of IEEPA, a law typically used for sanctions, not tariffs, sparked outrage among businesses and states, who argued it was an overreach of presidential power. Let's break down IEEPA. Enacted in 1977, it gives the president authority to regulate commerce during national emergencies, like freezing assets or imposing sanctions. But the word tariff never appears in the law. Trump claimed trade imbalances and fentanyl smuggling justified emergency tariffs. But critics, including 12 Democratic-led states and small businesses, said IEEPA doesn't grant him that power. They argue the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, authority over tariffs. This tension led to lawsuits, with the U.S. Court of International Trade ruling on May 28, 2025, that Trump's tariffs exceeded IEEPA's scope. The court blocked the 10% global tariffs, the fentanyl-related tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico, and the reciprocal tariffs paused until July 9. Fast forward to August 29, 2025. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, in a 7-4 ruling, upheld the lower court's decision, declaring most of Trump's tariffs illegal. The majority, including 1 Republican and 6 Democratic appointees, leaned on the major questions doctrine, a Supreme Court principle that says Congress must clearly authorize major executive actions. They argued Trump's tariffs were unheralded and transformative, impacting billions in trade without clear congressional approval. The dissent, led by judges like Richard Taranto, countered that IEEPA's broad emergency powers cover tariffs, especially since Congress requires the president to report such actions. The court paused its ruling until October 14th, giving Trump's team time to appeal to the Supreme Court. Why does this matter? These tariffs have reshaped global trade. They've raised costs for U.S. businesses. Think small importers like toy companies or wine distributors, who faced higher prices and supply chain chaos. Consumers are feeling the pinch too, with higher prices for goods from cars to groceries. On the flip side, Trump argues tariffs protect American workers, farmers, and manufacturers by leveling the playing field against countries with unfair trade practices. He's warned that striking down the tariffs could lead to financial ruin, comparing it to a 1929-style crash. Critics like law professor Ilya Salmon call this hyperbole, saying the economy won't collapse without these tariffs. But businesses could seek billions in refunds if the rulings stand. Let's talk about the economic impact. By July 2025, Trump's tariffs had brought in $142 billion, a massive boost to federal revenue. But they've also disrupted trade deals. Countries like Japan, the EU, and the UK negotiated temporary agreements to reduce tariffs. But the court ruling throws these into question. Foreign leaders may now hesitate to strike deals, waiting for the Supreme Court's verdict. Companies like General Motors, Ford, and Diageo have scrapped forecasts due to tariff uncertainty, while others, like Honda and Novartis, are eyeing U.S. expansions to dodge import costs. The ruling doesn't affect tariffs under other laws, like the 25% duties on steel and autos under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, but it's a major blow to Trump's trade war strategy. Now, let's dive into the legal Eisenhower court. The Federal Circuit's 7-4 decision, split along ideological lines, shows how polarized this issue is. The majority cited the major questions doctrine, arguing IEEPA doesn't allow sweeping tariffs without explicit congressional intent. The dissenters, including Obama and Bush appointees, said IEEPA's emergency powers are broad enough to include tariffs, given its foreign affairs context. This sets up a constitutional showdown. Does the president have the power to impose tariffs under emergency laws, or is that Congress's domain? The Supreme Court, with its 6-3 conservative majority, including 3 Trump appointees, will likely decide. Past rulings, like the 2023 student loan case, suggest the court may limit executive overreach, but its stance on foreign affairs powers is less clear. What's next? The Trump administration is expected to appeal by October 14th, and the Supreme Court could take the case by late 2025. If the court rules against Trump, importers could demand refunds of up to $30 billion, a logistical nightmare. Trump could try other laws, like Section 301 of the Trade Act, but experts like Nazak Nikoctor say these lack IEEPA's sweeping scope. The White House insists the tariffs are legal, with spokesman Kush Desai saying they're vital for national security. Trump himself called the ruling highly partisan on Truth Social, vowing to fight on. Meanwhile, businesses in states like Oregon celebrate the ruling as a check on presidential power. Let's explore the Supreme Court's potential role. The court's conservative majority has favored limited executive power in cases like the student loan forgiveness ruling, but it's also backed broad presidential authority in foreign affairs. The outcome is uncertain, especially with Trump's 3 appointees on the bench. A loss could force Trump to rethink his trade strategy, relying on narrower laws or congressional approval. A win could cement his ability to use tariffs as a foreign policy tool. Either way, the decision will shape the balance of power between Congress and the president. Now, let's talk about the global ripple effects. Countries like Canada, hit with 35% tariffs over fentanyl, argue the drug issue is overstated. U.S. data shows minimal fentanyl seizures at the northern border. India faces 50% tariffs for buying Russian oil, straining U.S. relations. The EU, Japan, and the UK have secured partial tariff reductions, but the ruling could unravel these deals. Critics warn of retaliatory tariffs, which could hurt U.S. exporters like farmers and manufacturers. Supporters, like Trump, argue tariffs are essential to counter trade deficits and protect American industries. And that's the story so far. Trump's tariffs are in legal limbo, and the Supreme Court could decide the fate of U.S. trade policy. Will Trump get his way, or will Congress take back control? This is a battle about power, money, and America's place in the global economy. What do you think? Should presidents have this much power over tariffs, or is it time for Congress to step up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more updates on this story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.